welcome again to our first MLIS Colloquium for the spring 2015 semester. I'm delighted to see all of you here. Welcome to everyone, the MLIS Colloquium on-campus people. Welcome indeed to our online MLIS Colloquium people. And we have also the principles of searching people here today, so thank you very much. I think David is coming over to do something with the microphone. Oh wait, we have to shut the music off. We liked it. We were playing some Jimmy Buffett, kind of get you guys in the mood, get it, you know, a little springy kind of thing. So tonight we are delighted to have two really fine and interesting speakers with us, and I will let Dr. Valenza introduce you to them. Before I get started with that, I want to remind the MLIS Colloquium people that, again, your attendance and the way you pass this course is by posting a brief reflection on the lecture at the end of to the eCollege site, so don't forget to do that. You have about a week to do that. And with no further ado, and since we're running a little late, I'd like to welcome to our podium Dr. Joyce Valenza.
Hi students, and hi face-to-face students, and hi online students. We're happy that you're with us tonight. Tonight, more than any nights in our colloquium series, I feel like I'm with my people. And I know, let me just get a sense for our speakers. How many of you are thinking about public library youth services? And I will try to take a poll of our online people later. And how many people are thinking about school library service? Looks like it's about half and half here. And how many of you are thinking maybe about academic librarianship, in which we deal with youth as well? Okay. Oh, and some of you are thinking about a whole bunch of things, I see. Well, I thought I'd start by telling you a little story. Once upon a time, and not so far away, there was a prince at Paul named Eric, who searched far and wide. In fact, he searched every single exit for a beautiful and talented library princess who could transform his castle and his kingdom and all of its people. At New Milford High School, Laura Fleming transports the castle into a fantasy world, creating worlds of learning. Through her magic glasses, children and teachers get to see literacy in all sorts of ways. Seeing 3D virtual worlds, experiencing transmedia, engaging and rethinking and exploding story. The people in and outside of the castle participate in the learning experience. As Laura says, the world is their platform and content is ubiquitous and narrative is a powerful voice in connecting those things. We can creatively leverage the multiple platforms available to teach children to interpret the world beyond text, to connect with popular culture, to encourage creativity, not just consumption, to play with and remix and mash up and expand the potential universe of story. Laura Fleming has been an educator in the state of New Jersey for 17 years. She's been a classroom teacher and a media specialist in grades K to 8, and currently as a media specialist at New Milford for grades 9 to 12. She's a writer, a speaker, and has served as an educational consultant on next generation teaching methods. She's consulted on transmedia projects and properties and worked with producers to help maximize the value of their creations and tool sets for teachers and students. I hear that just today her book was published. Maybe we can talk a little bit about that. Laura's goal is to create learning experiences that empower and equip students with the necessary skills to effectively produce and consume content across media platforms. She speaks and consults around the country on education, librarianship, and technology. Her makerspace has garnered national attention and served as an inspiration for schools around the country. She's a recipient of the National School Board's 20 to Watch in EdTech Leadership for 2014. Second part of the story. Once upon a time, there was a clever farm girl named Sharon, and she filled her library with pigs and iPads and authors. And students around the world were also in her library. In her large bag and in her little red wagon were Maker Magic. Since 2009, her voice has been heard on blogs and through her tweets. Shannon Miller is a teacher librarian and technology integration specialist. She is a consultant for Mac and Educational Resources. She consults for In This Together Media, Biblionasium. She is also now the Skype Education Ambassador. Her magic carpets carry publishers, authors, experts, and children from around the world into her library and carry her children's voices into a world they will own someday. Shannon's kids have written all over the world participating in Dot Day, World Read Aloud Day, our joint book clubs, and she convinces her students and all of us that they're not just in Iowa anymore, although Iowa may be just a great place to begin the journey. Shannon is the author of the award-winning Library Voice blog, and she's also has a claim to tweeting royalty. In 2011, she was awarded the Connecting People Shorty Award. She serves on a whole bunch of committees, ASL Best Websites, the STEM Task Force, advisory boards for Library Journal, Horn Books, School Library Journal, School Library Monthly, Rosen Digital Library. I'm not going to go through all that. As you see, the lovely ladies to my left are not damsels in distress. These two outstanding creative school library youth services professionals discuss what it looks like when we ignore the walls of our institutions, when we listen to and validate the voices of children and teens, and engage them in meaningful work, and immerse them in story. These princesses or farm girls don't see moats. Instead, they conjure magic carpets. And they listen to creatures, no matter how small, and they amplify their voices. They face challenges and turn them into quests. They turn riddles into vision. They share their stories, and they help us all make even greater magic. And I'd like to introduce you to my friends, Shannon Miller and Laura Fleming.
That was a great introduction. Oh my goodness.
Okay, well, I'm going to let you start since you're the first person.
So, hi everybody. Oh my gosh, what an amazing introduction. I am just so touched and I'm so excited to be here with you tonight. The excitement and enthusiasm is just truly contagious. We were both saying we wished we were students here now. It's like this crazy, amazing feeling, this vibe going on tonight. So thank you for having us. We're really excited to be here. So obviously, as you know, my name is Laura Fleming, and I am a teacher librarian at New Milford High School in New Jersey. So I'm extra excited to be here tonight because I am from New Jersey myself, and I actually received my Rutgers certification, library certification. So I'm really, really happy to be back here tonight with all of you. So although my title is teacher librarian at New Milford High School, I can't help but think of this story when I think of my career, and I've been a librarian, I think, for about 10 years now, and I've been in education for 17. And as I reflect back on all of those years, I can't help but think about all the different hats I've worn and continue to wear to this day. I was speaking to someone just the other day about what it's like to be a school librarian today, and they compared it to the wild, wild west. So it's a really exciting time to be a school librarian. But at times it can feel a little bit daunting because you do have a lot of hats to wear and a lot of responsibilities to fulfill on a daily basis. So these are some of the more traditional hats that I have worn and probably that you're learning about, or some of you might have already experienced on the job already. But some of the things that I can add to this diagram here are barista. I make coffee on a daily basis. I've been a moving lady, a cleaning lady. So there are a lot of hats that you'll be wearing that you're not even necessarily expecting to have to wear. And truly the hats that I wear change on a daily basis, and that to me is what makes it all exciting and makes it fun and fresh on a daily basis. So Shannon and I are really here tonight not to necessarily teach you the things that you already know and you're learning here at Rutgers in this phenomenal program, but we're really here to kind of share with you what we've learned over the years, and that it's really all about having an imagination. And with your imagination, you can achieve things that you never thought you could achieve. And really, in a lot of ways, that's more important than the knowledge that we learn in school, although, of course, that's valuable too. But there are certain lessons that you learn along the way when you're out there and you're working and you're doing it. And that's really what we're here to share with you tonight.
Well, I just wanted to say thanks for having us, too. Can you guys hear us okay? Way back there? Okay, good. And thanks, Joyce, for the nice introduction, too. But as Joyce said, my name is Shannon, and I was the district teacher librarian at Van Meter Community School in Van Meter, Iowa, which is a small little school, a lot different from maybe what is around here, because we're out in the middle of farm community and about 600 kids in our entire school, K-12. And so that's a picture of where I came from. But even though we had a small school, there were just lots of great things going on in our school. We had a lot of traditional things. You know, here I am reading to kids, and I always shared good literature and things like that with the kids, but we also had a really active library. It was not quiet. It was not very neat and tidy always. It was constantly a busy, definite heart of the school. And we're going to Skype in a minute, and so you have to excuse that little popping up thing. And we also had people all the time, as Joyce said, in our library from other places. And it was a very common scene to see several Skypes or Google Hangouts going on through the day. And so our library wasn't in just the four walls either of our school. But it all comes down, no matter what you do in a public or school library, to the relationships and the relationships that you have with the people. If it's the teachers, the kids, the parents, other librarians, it all has to do with the relationships that you're having. And so my favorite quote is, "Be the change that you wish to see in the world." And so I give you this before we start, that we as librarians, educators, as people who care about young people, we really must change. And so think about this as you listen to Laura and I. Imagine how you'll inspire change when you hear these stories, because we were talking today about sometimes it's kind of overwhelming to hear from two librarians who have done all of this. I mean, I know that feeling when I started, but remember, this is a story of several years. And this is a story of where we started and all of the things that we've done. And so, and if you take one thing from it, I think that that is where you want to be. And so don't think you have to do it all tonight after listening to us talk. So the first thing that we're going to talk about, and we want you to think about, is to imagine what is possible with story.
So I think as a librarian, we oftentimes hear the debate whether we should have print books or ebooks, and I was just saying we're having that debate in my library now. But really, to me, it's not about print or ebooks, because really the story doesn't change. The medium is just what changes there. So for me, it's all about how we experience the story. So really a passion of mine has been finding opportunities and leveraging all of the platforms around us today to immerse our students in story and provide them with an experience. So that's really something that I hope to ignite your imagination a little bit as we go on tonight. So what we're talking about is this idea, really, of playing with story. And as a library media specialist, this is something that I strive to do over the years, provide opportunities for my students not only to consume stories, which we're so good at providing opportunities for them to do that, but opportunities to participate and create stories. And not only just create stories, in the traditional sense, but across multiple media platforms. And this is something I've had a ton of fun with. So allowing opportunities for students through story to become content creators. And really this has been what has allowed me to provide the most engaging experiences for my students, is this idea of playing with story. So I just want to share with you one of my favorite stories of all time. This story is Skeleton Creek, written by the author Patrick Carman. Absolutely changed my career. I think it's probably been about 7 or 8 years since I discovered Skeleton Creek.
And at the time, I had been a school library media specialist for a few years, and I was noticing that my students were becoming less engaged year after year. And you know, even my tried and true favorite read-alouds weren't engaging them as they once did, and I really was starting to get very frustrated, and I thought it was me. So I spent a lot of time researching the best literature, talking to people about great read-alouds, you know, researching the best literature out there, and still, no matter what kinds of stories I found, they were still becoming less and less engaged as each school year passed. I really then began to take it a little bit personally. I thought, well, maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe it really isn't about the literature at all. Maybe it's me that's becoming less interesting. So I became animated. I had props. I tried everything. I was in a K-6 school at the time. And the kids still, year after year, just became less and less engaged with what we were doing until I discovered Skeleton Creek. And for those of you who don't know the story Skeleton Creek, it's a hybrid book. It's told half in text, half in video. So you read a little bit of the story, you come to a page in the story that gives you a password, you log on to a website and you enter in the secret password, and the next half of the story is told in video. So they're told in tandem, so the reader can't just read the text to understand the story, and they can't just watch the video, which a lot of the kids are eager to do, but they can't do that because they only get part of the story if they do that. It's really a groundbreaking style of storytelling, and upon reading this story to my 6th graders at the time, they became so engaged that library, and at the time I was a prep, I became the most popular prep of their week. Forget gym, forget art. They were stopping their teachers in the middle of their lesson saying, it's almost time to go to the library, we need to go to the library. And literally, they would run down the hallway and bang on the door to come in. It really changed everything. So what I discovered because of Skeleton Creek is that my students were becoming less and less engaged because the traditional form of story that I had used up until that point, which was traditionally text-based, was no longer engaging for all of the students. For some of them, yes, but for a lot of them, no, it just didn't do it anymore. You know, they went home and they had their devices and they had their multiple media platforms outside of school, but then they came into my library and they didn't have that. So this really changed everything for me. So at this point, I realized it was the form of the story that was the hook. And not only did we have so much fun reading this kind of story, but this opened up so many opportunities for students to become creators. And we had a lot of fun playing with story because of this story. And up here you can see a little screen capture of our Multimedia Storytelling Challenge. Students had the opportunity to write stories across multiple media platforms. And just like Patrick Harmon did in Skeleton Creek, where he tied the text with the video, our students learned how to do that too, how to tell a story across multiple media platforms. So they had a choice. They didn't have to use videos. They could use games as a part of their stories, which a lot of them loved, and puzzles. And we talked about telling your story across those different platforms. So if you're going to integrate a game into your story, how is that game going to continue your story and not take away from it? So I really believe as library media specialists, we have a lot of liberties that we can take outside of the traditional classroom canon. And I'm a former classroom teacher, so I know what it's like to have standards and assessment and have to cover certain things in a certain amount of time. But I think as librarians, we can take some liberties. And I really felt like this was our launching point for exposing students to this world of storytelling that they completely would have missed out on had it just been limited to their regular classroom experiences. So this was the book that changed everything for me. What time is it? Because we have a special guest.
So Laura thought it would be fun because she loved this, and we've been tweeting about this a little bit the last couple days. And do you guys know who Patrick Harmon is and Skeleton Creek story? So tonight on Twitter, he's doing a new project, and Laura and we were talking about, Joyce and I were talking about it, and we thought it would be fun to show you guys, if you've never Skyped before, what it's like to Skype with an author. And so we're going to Skype with Patrick for a few minutes, and he's going to tell us about his new project. Laura, where are you going?
I'm just grabbing my phone because his questions are on here.
I'm like, this is yours. He's awesome.
I'll say how this all happened because this is an important lesson that I've learned along the way. It's the power of social media, and we're going to talk about that more later on. But what happened was I tweeted that Shannon and I were here presenting tonight and that I would be talking about Patrick Harmon. He knows I stalk him. I'm like, he's my idol. So he's like, oh, again, she's talking about me. But he ended up tweeting back a few links for us to share with all of you. And then Shannon so boldly said, hey, how about you Skype in with us? So he's going to Skype in, hopefully, with us tonight to share those links.
Let me interrupt for a second.
Yeah.
So you guys, what are you going to do to build social capital with Patrick Harmon?
Right.
Yeah, what are you going to
Tweet
do?
at him about our
Absolutely.
Yeah. Take a picture and say,
Skyping with Patrick Harmon.
But we're using we're using TL chat because that's the general hashtag if you're a school librarian. We're also using LIS 50220.
And that's the beauty of social media. It really levels the playing field. Before Twitter, how would I ever have gotten in touch with Patrick Harmon, especially in enough time to Skype with us tonight? So it really is amazing.
Hey.
It worked.
how are you?
I can't hear you guys.
Yay.
I wish I could see everybody, but I'm not going to move the computer.
I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, here, just a second.
I can't hear you, but you may can.
I can't hear you.
I can see you.
Just a second.
Where are you? Are you in a closet? What is this thing?
Oh, here's the chat.
I can see your lips moving, but there's no words coming out.
This is what This is what you have to be prepared for when you Skype with kids. Always practice. Or if you don't, something happens, you have to be flexible too.
Oh, wait. I heard a voice.
Hear us?
Yay.
Hi, there you are. Can you hear me now? Hey, I was led to believe this was going to be like 4 tipsy ladies sitting at a table telling her.
What are you saying?
I'm not saying anything.
I haven't seen you for a
It
while.
was us.
I just spent the last 10 minutes deleting all my posts off of Twitter. That was stupid.
Oh, it's okay. So we're here with a group from, I'm at Rutgers, do you remember Joyce Valenza from School Library Journal 2?
I think I do.
Say hi. And so we're here, and this is my friend Laura, who you've been
Hey.
tweeting
Hi.
with.
Come in here.
Good to see you.
And she
You're my hero.
You're my hero. You're the hero of a lot of people here.
Well, it's very nice to be liked. I thank you guys for inviting me in for a couple of minutes. This is great.
So Laura just got done telling about how Skeleton Creek kind of changed the way that she saw story in her library. And so she has a few questions for you. And we wanted to not only let them hear just from an author, but also just to hear what you're working on. So a lot of them, how many of you have Skyped before with an author? They're all like,
Well,
yeah.
apparently if you jump on Skype and just on Twitter and look for me, I'll just show up. So you should do that. I was in a weird mood today. It was weird. I was in my car while we were doing that. I had gone to the grocery store to get stuff, and I was in the parking lot parked, and I'm like, oh, look, they're contacting me. So that whole thing took place at in front of a Safeway.
Yeah, you get wrapped up. So go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, so Patrick, you were so kind to tweet us some links that had to do with your newest project, so I thought this would be a great opportunity for you to tell everybody about it yourself.
Well, I hate to take up all your valuable time. You've got lots of important things to say. I'm so impressed with what you're doing, Laura. Good job. I've been following you for a long time. So we need champions like you and Shannon both just for, this when you're trying to do something different with books, which I've been doing for a long time. You need heroes like you guys. You guys are doing an amazing job out there. So thanks for spreading the word, spreading the love. I really appreciate it. So am I seeing them? Can they see me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. I wasn't sure if it was just you and I. a nice intimate moment we were having there, but it's really everybody.
Yeah.
So I'm working on another big project with Random House right now, which will come out in the fall. It's called Voyagers. Here's the funny thing. I got a cover of the book I can show you, and I only got the paper. So of course I took it, and this is what it looks like. You can kind of see that. And I actually wrapped it around a skeleton Greek book. So if I actually take the book out, it really is just one of these. But yeah, so this is going to be so fun. It's a great list of writers. I came up with this world because I was a big Star Wars fan when I was a kid. And I always wanted to write something that took place in space because I know that just really sparks kids' imaginations. And so I've been working on this for about 3 years. And Random House jumped on board about 1.5 years ago, and we worked on it secretly for almost a year. And the first book's going to be written by DJ McClintock, so that's all the Pendragon books. Robin Wasserman is writing one, I'm writing one. Jeannie Dupre, who wrote the City of Ember book, she's doesn't really get out, can write very much, hasn't written anything since, but she's going to write one of them. And Kekla Magoon, who just, I think she just won a Coretta Scott King Award or something like that. One of those fancy awards that I don't go to those things. But, and Wendy Mass is writing the last one. So it's a great list of writers with lots of different kinds of fan bases. And the story is about a bunch of kids who show up at a space camp to compete to go into space. There are reasons in the story why they have to be kids, but they have this really cool ship and they go off to 6 different planets searching for 6 different elements that when they combine them will basically save the world. And there's a great sort of Darth Vader character, and there's all kinds of great shenanigans that go on. But the other great thing is that it's got a big, huge technology piece. So every kid that reads these books gets to go along on the ship for the whole journey and learn about all kinds of cool space stuff and just have a great time. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to eclipse 39 Clues. I'm very, very excited about it. So I didn't want this to be a promotional moment, but yeah, so but it's going to be a lot of fun. You'll definitely hear about it. It'll be great.
When is it due to be released?
So the first one comes out in September, and those books will come out every 60 days for a year.
Ooh.
So it's one of those great things too with kids where it's like once you get them going, then you'll know there'll be another one coming out just 2 months later, this big thing. So, yeah. So what have you guys been up to? Sitting around? It's a lovely room you have there. I especially like the door. It's a beautiful door.
I can use the computer and show you, but there's like 1,000 things hooked up to it. So we'll have to take a picture and we'll tweet it.
I thought you were going to say there was like 1,000 people in the room. Wow.
We're in Giant Stadium.
Well, it's funny. I'm actually going out on the road to do a bunch of touring starting next month, and I've been doing all this research on exponential growth because I'm really interested in, as some of you may have heard of Moore's Law and how computer speed doubles every 18 months, and if you go back and do the math and keep going forward, then we're getting really close to some crazy stuff. So in 2025, if everything goes as it's been going, you'll be able to go down to Best Buy and buy a laptop that will run as fast as the human brain. And by 2045, which isn't that far away, that same computer will run as fast as every human on planet Earth simultaneously. And so you combine that with, the internet, which has billions of people on it, and I mean, technology is taking us to some amazing, amazing places. And I do think sometimes, that's why I'm doing this, because I do feel like books have to evolve. I don't think all books do, but you're going to have more and more. You'll have kids in your classrooms who, they've got their phones, they've got their video games, they've got all this stuff. And if we can find a way to tap into that, my goal has always been that the destination is the book. And if we can find ways to hook those kids, and if any of this stuff helps, then yeah. So it's going to be fun to go out on the road, but you guys are going to give me the warm-up, right? This is great.
So exciting.
Oh yeah, we're so happy to hear from you and about what you're doing, and I'm sure that they could ask questions, but Laura and I have to keep talking, so.
Yeah, really important. Is there anybody that has a burning question they need to have answered?
Any burning questions?
What age range?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, that's a burning question.
That's a good question.
What's the age range?
Yeah, so the new ones, the Voyager series, is going to be very much in that middle grade pocket. So a really good reader who's like an 8 or 9-year-old, all the way up to a 6th, 7th grader. You'll have a lot of the kind of stuff that middle schoolers like too. So a lot of my books tend to run like that 10 to 14 range, but I think this will go a little bit lower and up to about 14. So, yeah.
I can't even wait.
Yeah, me too. And I'll be talking about Elliott's Park later on as well.
Oh, fun.
Do you have a question?
Yes, as a Star Trek fan, is it Captain Jean-Luc Picard, the captain, the original captain, or the one of Voyager, which is aptly named after?
Did you hear that question?
That person sounds like the person in Charlie Brown that teacher talks.
He said as a Star Trek fan.
Which Star Trek captain?
Which
Star
Trek
series?
captain
Since
or
you named it
series?
after Voyager.
Yeah.
Is the Voyager
Is
named
the
after?
Voyager named after?
Is that right?
Right?
So which
I don't know, so there was Star Trek Voyagers with an S at the end. We had a lot of training first step we had to go through
I
for
think
that,
you
but
wondered specifically about the captains, right?
Yeah, but which Star Trek like inspired? Was this inspired by that one? Or
Star
not?
Trek inspired you.
oh, only the old ones. I would come home from school when I was a kid, and it was Star Trek with Captain Kirk and the Tribbles and all that stuff. And Gilligan's Island and Batman and Robin, I watched all three of those pretty much every day. I didn't do any reading at all. So I never really watched I only ever watched the old Star Wars or Star Trek show, not the newer ones. So. Well, look, I think you guys have got more than I do. Actually have to run. My daughter, who's a senior, is giving her senior presentation at the high school tonight in about 15 minutes. So thank you so much, you guys. I hope you're having a great time, and really, you guys are my heroes. Thank you so much for doing the whole set. You guys have a great time.
Bye, thank you.
Okay, bye.
That's so nice. I'm going to
So
log
he is
out.
at Patrick Carmen on Twitter.
Jeez. That was cool. It's so nice.
Sorry, I have a question. I guess it's maybe just for overall when you were talking about incorporating technology, but do you think that technology can go too far, where it's like almost to the point where it's all consuming in a way? I know that's a tricky.
I mean,
I think maybe that's a good question to keep until the end.
Yeah,
until
I'm thinking
after
Okay.
we talk about it, because we could probably talk about that for a long time, but maybe hear our story first and then we'll talk about it.
That
Yeah.
sounds
Is that
great.
good? That's a great question though.
and this next story kind of takes the technology even further, so it'd be interesting to see what you think and how you feel about that, because this next story I'm going to talk about is called Inanimate Alice. Does anybody in here know Inanimate Alice? It's at inanimatealice.com. It's a digital story, totally digital. So it's not like Skeleton Creek where it's half print, half video, and half online. It's all digital. It was actually written to be read from the screen. So it's a completely different reading experience, I think, than most of our readers have ever had before. And oftentimes in school, I hear from classroom teachers that kids have to read, a book a month or something like that. And I always say to them, well, what about just reading a story? Does it have to be a book? Because this type of story captures, I think, all readers, but I think especially our most reluctant readers. So I question sometimes, does it have to be in print? Does it have to be a traditional story in that sense? Or can it be a digital story, and taking that technology a little bit further? So Inanimate Alice, if you don't know it, is an online digital story told in episodes. So right now there are 5 episodes online. Episode 1, the main character Alice, she is 9 years old, and the episode is supposed to emulate Alice's age. So it's a short episode. The whole episode probably takes about 10 or 15 minutes to read, depending on the reader. The vocabulary in the story is supposed to mirror that of a 9-year-old, so it's not very complex. Woven throughout the story are games and puzzles and activities for the kids to do. And because Alice is 9 years old, the things in episode 1 aren't very complicated. In fact, Alice has a device called a Boxy. It's almost like an iPhone or an iPod, something along those lines. And in episode 1, it's kind of like a device a 9-year-old would have. And the kids have opportunities to interact with that device, which is super cool. And all of their interactions help move the story forward, which is kind of what I was talking about in that multimedia storytelling challenge I did because of Skeleton Creek, teaching students how to create stories across multiple platforms so that those platforms don't take away from your story. They help forward your story and help your story to unfold and help tell your story. So all of the games and puzzles and activities in Inanimate Alice do that. They help push the story forward. So you really feel like, in fact, I had a student say to me when I first showed this story several years ago, that his language arts teachers were always telling him that when he read stories, they wanted him to feel like he was walking in the main character's shoes. And his teachers have told him that so many times, and he told me that it didn't click until he read this story. And I think it's really because of the multimedia elements, it's because it's a first-person narrative. You really feel like you're walking in Alice's shoes. So the way this story unfolds is that in episode 2, the story becomes a little bit longer, a little bit more complex. Alice is 10 years old in the second episode, so her device changes. It's a little bit more complex. The games, the puzzles, and activities become more complex, and that pattern continues throughout the whole series. And besides being a fantastic reading experience for consuming the story, it really opens up a lot of participatory opportunities to allow our students to become creators of content themselves. So at the time when I first discovered Inanimate Alice, there were only 4 episodes online out of a 10 planned episode series. So myself and actually many teachers and librarians around the world took it upon themselves to have their students create the next episodes in the series. So right now episode 5 is out, but you certainly can continue the series with episode 6. A lot of librarians and teachers have had their students write in between episodes. So in episode 1, she's this old, in episode 2, she's this old, but what happened in between? So it allows them opportunities to kind of fill in those gaps. So really the message that I try to get across to my students and the experience I try to provide for all of them is to not think about stories in isolation, but think of them more as a storied world. And I think Patrick Harmon mentioned that in something he said tonight. And I'm going to talk more about that in some of my other examples, including this one. This is actually another Patrick Harmon story. I love him. He's just phenomenal. This is one of his only books that he's written for early readers. So this is probably a good book for elementary school age kids. I actually read it with second graders. You can certainly do it with first or third. They are chapter books. It's a small little series. There are 3 books only in the series, and it's called Elliot's Park. And this is actually a story I'm going to tell you based on an article I wrote for School Library Journal. So if you scan that QR code, it'll take you right to the article, which will give you bigger images of the things we did if you want to take a closer look. But essentially, Elliot's Park is a great story, and my students loved the text story. But the reason they were crazy about this story is because of the online components Patrick Harmon offers to go along with this story. He provides a virtual tour of Elliot's Park, which is where all of these stories take place, these 3 books take place. You can download character cards. You can hear the characters speak. They introduce themselves to the students, and they're all squirrels, so they kind of have like these Alvin and the Chipmunks kind of voices. So the kids, oh my gosh, they're like rolling on the ground before you even read the story, just hearing some of these characters. One of them drinks too much soda, so he has the hiccups and he burps, and the whole room goes crazy. The kids were so immersed in this story before we even read the first chapter. It was amazing. So by the time we finally did start reading the story, they gobbled it up like crazy. So what happened was we finished the first book in the series, and although I love Patrick Harmon, I couldn't spend the entire school year reading the rest of the books in the series. But it did provide an opportunity for us to kind of extend his story world a little bit. So what we decided to do is we chose a character in the story. And all of the characters in the story are squirrels except for one, a goose in the story. And by the end of the first book, you only know a few things about this goose, but this goose is super interesting because she's the only goose in the entire park. She's the only creature that's there that is not a squirrel, and she hates the squirrels, but you don't know why. So the kids felt very curious about this goose. So what we decided to do was map out this character, and that image in the center is a screenshot of our map. But if you go onto School Library Journal, you can see the bigger map. It was phenomenal, the things these kids came up with. So we started mapping the character traits of Wilma the goose, and these were things that came totally from the children's imaginations. And in fact, at the end of this story, Patrick Harmon told us that he learns about Wilma the Goose through their activities. And it's really provided a lot of information for kids around the world who like Elliott's Park but are left wanting more also. Because what our students did after mapping out the character of Wilma the Goose is they created a blog for Wilma. And at the time, that TV show Dog with a Blog had just come out, and the kids were like crazy about this TV show. So we kind of piggybacked on that TV show a little bit, and it provided an opportunity for me to have a conversation with my second graders. Hey, I know you all love this show. Can anyone tell me what a blog is? And not one hand went up, but they all loved this show. So we actually watched some clips from the show. We watched the dog blog. There were some clips on YouTube. And they began to become familiar with the concept of blogging through that show. So we created our Wilma the Goose blog together. It was a collaborative effort across classes and across the entire grade level. And through that blog, we were immersed deeper into this Elliott's Park story world, a piece where the kids felt they were left hanging a little bit. And as I said, Patrick Harmon said we enlightened him, which was very cool. So that was a great immersive storytelling experience that we had.
So I'm just going to tell about a couple of different projects that we did, and I know that one of the questions, even if you're in a school or public librarian, is the big piece of collaboration and doing things with others. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this in a little bit, but a lot of my projects, in fact all of them after a couple years, were all collaborative efforts, whatever we did. And this is a great one because when teachers would come to me, and we also had activities too with the public librarians in the summertime, when they would come to me with different charges that they wanted me to do. And this one was one from my cousin Krista, and she teaches kindergarten at Van Meter, and they were getting ready for a Mercer Mayer unit. And she said, do you think that we could Skype with Mercer Mayer? And I'm like, that is like a huge, huge thing to ask me to do, but we'll try. And so the kids and I set out and we made a book, and we did illustrations, and they wrote things, and we used the digital tool called Little Bird Tales, and we made a little critter book. And we shared it on Mercer's Facebook wall, we tweeted about it, we emailed him, and we heard nothing, and this was in September. And in January, Mercer wrote on my Facebook wall, and he said, I would love to Skype with your kids. And so we Skyped in Mercer Mayer one day with our kindergarten through second graders. And that was the only Skype that I ever started crying in, because he started drawing a little critter and I lost it. Because I'm like, it just meant so much to all of us. And the thing though about them sharing stories, not just with the kids, where it's sharing their stories and then the kids recreate a story. We did this, to get his attention and to make him proud of the kids, and they took such ownership over it. But just remember, like when we just Skype Patrick, what it means to the authors. They absolutely love it. And Mercer is so funny. Him and I are friends now, and he always tells me, he's like, you're the only person that ever asked me to Skype. And I'm like, that's because everybody's afraid of you because you're Mercer Mayer. And it is so true. And so, it was so surreal the first time I'm talking to him in my kitchen, getting ready, practicing it and stuff. But it means the world to them. And so don't forget just to reach out and ask as well. And it means the world to our kids too. It's the best. This is another story, the same kind of thing, that they wanted to recreate a story of books that they loved. And this little boy loved I Spy books. And Aaron came to me and he said, I want to create an I Spy book for our class, but I want to show it to the author. And so I reached out to Jean, who wrote the I Spy series, and asked her, and she was very specific. She said, you must create a book first. And so the kids and we set off on this project, and it was a big project, and they brought in their own little objects, and they took pictures, and they drew or made little pictures out of their iPad, and then we uploaded them into a tool called FlipSnack and made our own flippable ebook. And once we had that done, and this was what it looked like, it was just adorable. Once we had that done, we Skyped in Jean, and she gave advice, and she read every one of the students' stories. And it probably was a 2-hour-long conversation on Skype with her, but it was amazing what they did. And afterwards, we went one step further because the book was so wonderful that was the point that I started cataloging student work right in my catalog, in my library catalog. And we had Destiny. And so I would just catalog them as a new title and add that to our catalog that we had, so they then could look at not only the I Spy books we had in the library, but also the work that they had done too. And that gave them a lot of ownership in the story that they made. One thing that people are doing now too is think about, like Laura had a QR code on one of her slides, but also there's augmented reality now, and how that is changing story, and how that is going to change a lot of things, not just what Patrick is doing when you can go onto the internet and look for things, but last year we used a tool called LAR, and we put our own augmented reality into books. And this was one, it was a fairy tale unit that we do as 2nd grade. And I went in with this tool and I added augmented reality, so when the kids would scan the pages, they would find other things that like the naked eye couldn't see. And so they used an app, they used a LAR app, and when they scanned the fairy tale pages, then up pop things that weren't there with their naked eye. And publishers are going to start doing things like this, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what Abdo's doing too with QR codes lately. And one thing I wanted to tell you about is we'll talk about a few events too during the year, but this is a great way to get your kids involved in story and different literacy projects too. But this is World Read Aloud Day, and it's coming up soon in a couple weeks. And this is from an organization called Lit World, and they celebrate literacy all over the world, but especially in third world countries where kids might not have access to books and to teachers. And what we have done every year, probably for the last 4 or 5 years, is we spend the whole week celebrating. And so last year we connected 32 times with people all over the world. And it was as simple as sharing a book, as simple as telling a story. But it made a huge, huge difference in our school. And what we do, if any of you want to get involved or see what we're doing, and we'll share this presentation as well, I think Joyce put it on the LibGuide, but you can go to that URL and you can see dozens of people that have already signed up and that are connecting. And so if you're a teacher or even a public librarian, you can go on this and you can find somebody else that you can partner with. You don't have to do it all yourself. And so look for these connections, because that really makes a difference. I checked on this 2 weeks ago and it was already 72 pages long of people connecting all over the world. And so it's just a public Google Doc that anybody can go to. Okay, so imagine what is possible in your collection. This is our next one.
Before I get into that, I was laughing when you were talking because Patrick Harmon couldn't see himself, so he finally saw himself and said he looked like Sasquatch. He was like so close to the screen, and he thanked everybody for being here tonight. So yeah, we're going to talk to you about imagining what's possible in circulation, and Shannon actually has a lot to say about this section. But something that I wanted to throw in that was a little bit different than what Shannon's going to be talking about is the idea of circulating electronic devices. My high school is a bring your own device high school, and something I am absolutely passionate about is bridging that digital gap that we have a lot of times in those bring your own device environments. Some students don't have their own personal devices, they can't afford their own personal devices, their families don't want them to have their own personal devices. So what can we as a school, and in particular, what can we do as librarians to help bridge that digital gap? And in my library, we have an initiative where we're circulating Chromebooks, and I have to say that we circulate more Chromebooks easily than we do traditional books. Every day our Chromebook cart is absolutely empty. And students know that those devices are there for them if they don't have their own personal device. Or through this program, we've also built in the idea of choice. How one device doesn't always do everything we need. I mean, I'm sure all of us came here tonight with at least 2 devices on us, maybe even more. And the reason is because one doesn't do everything you need to do. So we like to teach our students that when you have a task to do, you need to think carefully about what device is going to help you get that task done the best. And sometimes it's not your own personal device, which the students bring to school. Sometimes you do need a laptop. So they know they can come to the library anytime throughout the school day to borrow a Chromebook. But we also believe in the importance of providing 24/7 access to information in our library. So we have as an option for students to check out the Chromebooks not only for the school day, but for overnight and weekends. And they are so appreciative of it. We've had lots of situations where students, their computers at home have died and the family can't afford to get another one, or they haven't had time to go get another one, but they have an assignment that's due. So knowing that they have this device that they can take home with them has provided them with a lot of comfort, and really builds in that responsibility piece. You know, there's no excuses. We have a device for you, and it's up to you to take the initiative to check it out and use it. So these devices are cataloged right into our library system. We scan them in and out as we would any other item in our library, and it's really been an amazing, amazing initiative. We also circulate e-readers, which a lot of people do, I know, but this idea of circulating personal devices is something that I think is really, really important that we provide as libraries, whether in a school library or public library, for our patrons.
Yeah, I was with our friend Michelle Ludala last week, and she even, and we had some, but I didn't have to really circulate them because we didn't have a huge student population, but she circulates everything from chargers to power cords to strips to everything. And so think about all the things that our kids need, you know, now that maybe they didn't need in the past. But as a librarian, especially working with K-12, I absolutely love books. And I'm also an artist, so I love picture books. I love to read picture books to even our seniors, and that was something that I was hugely passionate about. But then a few years ago, we started adding to our collection ebooks. And in the state of Iowa, we get our ebooks from, it's a consortium. And so we were really, really lucky because we had this great collection of ebooks, and mostly nonfiction, not the fiction. And then we added Tales to Go, which is audiobooks, and it's all done through streaming and really super easy. So you don't have to, you know, check out, you don't have to wait for that book to come back anymore. Every student in your school could be on the same audiobook. Every school in your student could be on the same ebook. It doesn't matter. And so that was really, really important. And we started adding a lot more databases. Pebble Go by Capstone, Starwatt Kids Media is a database of books from the author Seymour Simon, and just made it a really rich collection when it came to our ebooks and our e-resources. And as I watched the kids, I had at the time, my youngest one was in 2nd grade, and I would watch what Hagen was reading, and he was reading in tons of different categories that he had never read before, lots of different genres that I had never seen him read. He always picked up the football books, probably because he knew where they were on the shelf and he loved them. But that was about all he was reading. When he started reading from the ebooks, he started reading and talking about so many more subjects. And so I looked at my collection and I decided to get rid of the Dewey Decimal System, and I went totally category-based in our nonfiction. And this made a huge, huge difference. Our circulation went up more than 30% in the first month. And it wasn't that they were just checking out more books, they were reading in a whole bunch of different categories. So what I had thought, what I had observed, was completely right. And it wasn't just the kids checking more things out, it was parents coming in, teachers coming in, administrators coming in and borrowing things more than they ever had before. And so as I watched that, I also started thinking about our fiction. And I decided to genreify it, just like it would be in Barnes & Noble. And I completely genreified all the fiction. And this made a giant difference too. And like I said, I was cataloging student work. And so our collection wasn't just growing through audiobooks and these great databases and ebooks and the way that we organize things, it was also student content that we were adding as well. And I just wanted to mention a few things that publishers are doing. This is a new one from Cantata Learning, and you know how you would get the books and they would have music in the back, and they would have a DVD or a CD, and you could never check them out because that might get lost. Well, now these have the music free online. You could even go there and get the music. And I took the digital tool. I love Symbaloo. Have you guys seen Symbaloo before? Symbaloo is the one down there with all of the tiles, and it's my favorite place to curate information, and it's a social bookmarking site. And so I took all the books from Cantata, and I took a little screenshot of the cover, and then I linked it to each individual song. And so the kids can just go to the Symbaloo, and they can find that song, all free, very easy. So now you can check out all these books to kids. They don't have to worry about losing them.
Sharon, I just wanted to point out, because we have the Principles of Searching class here, This is a strategy a lot of us use to compensate for the limited search skills of very young children. So when you curate these things, whether it's a Google Doc or a database or an individual book, you're making this stuff much more findable for very young children. Yeah.
And also for like parents, you
Yeah.
know, and teachers. You make it a lot easier, and you're going to have them using it a lot more as well. But that's part of our job, not just to take care of our collection on the shelves, but to take care of resources like this too. And so I think that that is a really neat thing that they've done. Abdo is another company, and Joyce wrote about this on her blog on School Library
Controversial
Journal.
at first.
Yeah, it was. And they have put barcodes on their books, so when you scan that barcode, it goes straight to an ebook. So kids can go to the shelf, they can scan the front cover of an Abdo book if it has the QR code, and it will automatically pop up on their device, and they can read that ebook right from there.
And you can create a bookmark with a group of QR codes, give that to the class that's studying the planets, and then all of a sudden they have all your planet books in the classroom openable.
I love this one. I
Yeah.
think it's so neat what they have done. And also, don't forget all of the free resources there are. Using Symbaloo, one thing that you can do with it is you can join Symbaloo and you can search for what others have put together and use it as your own. Matt Gomez is a kindergarten teacher in Texas. And what Matt has done is he goes out and he finds free books all the time. Free books, free magazines, and he puts these great web mixes together for all of us to use too. And so don't forget all the free things that you can do. And you can also catalog those things as well. And so that is a great thing, all the free things that we have. And Biblionasium is one of, Joyce and I absolutely love Marjan.
Yeah, take my social media class. All these people are going to come visit.
We love Marjan, and we love what she's done with Biblionasium. But you know how high school kids and adults, we use Goodreads and Shelfari, and that's great. My kids loved Goodreads. They just loved it. I love it to use it too. But there was nothing for our younger kids. This is for kids in kindergarten through 8th grade, and it is a social reading network, and very, very safe. So they can go on there and they can write reviews, they can recommend books, they can make their own shelves with books that they've read and books they want to read. It is just amazing. And they can search. It's not the books just in your library, it's any book. It's ebooks, it's databases, anything that they're reading, they can put on here and share. Parents can also join too, so when you make a class, you could also invite your parents and other teachers to join as well to create just a really cool learning, reading community.
And there's a motivational badge system within that that keeps kids reading.
Yeah, it's really great. So the next thing we're going to do is imagine what is possible with your budget.
A good segue talking about all that's out there that's for free. There have been times in my career where I've had a giant budget. There's been times in my career where I've had a little budget. There's been times in my career where I have no budget. And there's times when I have had a budget and complete autonomy over spending that budget and choosing how to spend that budget. And there's been times where I've had a budget but no autonomy in choosing how I want to spend that budget. So I really feel like I've been all over the map with this and have really experienced everything related to budget. And really, as much as I would prefer to have a budget, I think it's those times when you don't have a budget or you have a limited budget when you get the most creative. So some really great things can come out of those kinds of situations. And this is just one of my current favorite tools that I thought I would share with you all. If you don't know, I have a makerspace in my library, and this is something that we oftentimes use in the makerspace in my library. And actually these tools served as an entry point for me into the whole idea of making and playing with story. These are Mozilla's webmaker tools. And through simple coding activities, the students can create content. Even if they don't know anything about coding, even if you don't know anything about coding, the level of difficulty is very, very low. They do have more advanced things that you can do with their tools. But I definitely would say don't be afraid of them. They're really amazing. And the kids really not only have opportunities to create content using these tools, but to learn about the web and to learn about coding and the power of remixing the web and using resources that are available to us to create. So this is one of my favorite go-to tools or tool sets when the budget is tight. So Shannon is going to talk a little bit more about the great free tools that are out there.
And I already talked about Symbaloo, and I talked about books that are free, but most of the tools that we use, because I have never had a budget over $1,000 K-12 for a whole year. So that's really super small. Like we were talking today, and she said, I don't know what you said, $20,000.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've never even had that much to spend in the whole time that I taught, but so I can't imagine. And so you just never know what you might be faced with. And the tools, all of these tools on here are all free tools to use. And so the things that you're going to be sharing with your kids and having them create, these are free tools that you can use as well. And so it doesn't matter if you're, and we shared this with our public librarian. We made sure that those were on the computers that were at the school library and at the public library as well. And
this is what collection development looks like today. So if we really think of what those traditional functions are, this is also collection development.
Yeah, because part of that was part of a favorite part of my job was this part of the collection, was making sure that I had digital tools that I made sure that I tested, that I made an example of, that were going to be safe and fun, and also that they were going to tie into the curriculum for the kids to use, that they were going to have a function. And so that is a big part of our job. But these tools were ones that I knew that would serve a purpose for our kids and for our teachers as well. And some of these tools, like when I was thinking about them, as I was thinking about the presentation today, a lot of times they might have an education account that costs a little bit of money. But I got very good at asking for free stuff all the time. And so I would invite them in to, if it was a new tool, to Skype with us, not only to teach us and to teach the kids and maybe the teachers, but once you do that, you make friends with these companies, and then they'll give you things for free, like free trials. And do here's my advice about that, do an awesome project as you have your free trial, so you can prove to your administrators or people that are in charge of the budget why you need that tool, why you need it if it costs money. And this was one that was new last year called Bunsy, and they gave us a free trial a few times to do, and it was a wonderful thing to use. So don't forget that
you tweet it. They love having their name out there.
Yeah, if they're on Twitter, then they are there for a reason, to talk to all of us, just like authors. And so reach out to them and ask them for help, because that makes a big difference.
Yeah, and a lot of the times they'll trade their products for free public relations. So if you'll blog about it, if you'll tweet about it, you'll say great things about it, they'll give you something for free. So
but only if you love it.
Yeah, exactly.
Not if you passionate.
Not if you passionate. No. That's true. Okay, so this is an example of what you do when you have a tight budget. I started in my current library last year, and one of the things that I wanted to do was provide collaborative, flexible learning spaces for our students, because our library as it stands is one giant rectangle. We have no little rooms off to the side. We had no varied seating areas. So what we did have was one room off of our library that looked dark, it looked scary. You can tell nobody had entered it in decades. In fact, I was a student at this school in high school, and I never entered that room. I thought it was storage. Well, it turns out it was the nonfiction section, which is just great. So when I first started at this school, I polled some of the kids and some of the teachers to find out what they thought that room was, and everybody thought it was storage. It was so uninviting, it was scary. So we actually had some shelf space out in the main section of the library, so one of the first things I did was I cleared out those nonfiction books. I weeded them. We took them off the shelves. You could tell that they hadn't been touched in decades, the dust, and oh, we did find some gems, though, in that collection. So I weeded the collection. We put the books that we were keeping out in the main section of our library. I had our custodians take down the shelves in this room, and what I discovered that was when they took down the shelves, the carpet wasn't underneath the shelves. So now we had this carpeted room, which was gross to begin with, but there were pieces of carpet missing, and this fabulous, like, 1950s green tile shining through. So we were really in a predicament, and we didn't have enough money to buy flooring, and I'm not sure that as a librarian I'd want to use my budget for that anyway, because I had other things that were more important to me. So one day I was standing in that room, staring at all of the books that we had weeded out of that room. I mean, piles and piles of books, and I thought, oh, I could use the books to create a floor. So this room is tiled in dictionary pages and atlas pages of books that we were going to be discarding. So it was a great upcycling kind of project. We turned something old into something new. Our school environmental club helped us lay this tile floor because it's laid with just Elmer's glue and water. So it's very environmentally friendly. So it fit right in with their mission and what they wanted to do for the school. So it was a collaborative effort laying these tiles down. And it provided us with a really nice floor. And since we've transformed this into a little loungy area, which you'll see in a couple of slides. But now this room is not wasted. It's absolutely filled all the time. It's used for all different things, from naps to reading to doing work and to eating, actually. A lot of kids like to eat back here. So it's a really used space in our library. It's a really popular place to come throughout the school day. And really, we did it with hardly any budget at all. So it was great.
So cute.
Oh, and one thing that I wanted to say was we have a contest going in this room. Who can find certain words on the floor. So right now, if you find the word book, you win a free book. And it's just amazing how many high schoolers will get on their hands and knees and hunt for these words. You know, it's crazy. And they're so excited when they win a free book. So, yeah.
Another thing that I turned to last year was Donors Choose. And Donors Choose is amazing because you can ask for absolutely anything from Donors Choose. And a lot of times throughout the year, they'll have different specials. At the beginning of the school year, the Gates family, they were giving money to people that wanted to get 3D printers. I looked for one last year, and I found that Disney was giving money at the time that I wrote my grant. And so I wrote a grant, and it got funded within probably 2 weeks. And I not only shared it in my community, but I just tweeted the heck out of it and shared it on my Facebook a bunch of times. And it got funded, but Disney also gave $600 to it too. And so we put that into our library, and it was, I didn't know what it was going to do or why we even got it at the time, because I didn't know much about it, but I knew it was going to be cool, and we wanted one. And so think about, I wanted to say one more thing about Donors Choose too. You know, watch the specials on the top if you're interested in that, and you can also look at what other people have written grants for. I was in Alaska this summer. The most creative one that I ever had heard, a librarian wanted to teach her kids how to cook in the library, so she wrote a grant for 26 crock pots and 6 wagons so teachers could check them out, and it got funded. And so think totally outside of the box when you're talking to Donors Choose as well. Another thing, you know, asking companies like Bunsey to give us free trials, we also put out there that we would be beta testers for anything. And so the beta testing that we asked for, especially with things that we put into our makerspace, was a huge, huge plus sign. And here are the kids, and they were beta testers for Spiros. And have you guys heard of them? They're like little balls. They're playing with them right here. And you move them by different apps, and a lot of them have to do with how they code them to move or what color to turn. And so they gave us a set of 6, and our kids became beta testers. And we did this for a lot of different products. And so because I blog and because I tweet, when we would get these and the kids would do certain projects, or even just to take pictures of them and tweet about it or write about it on my blog or put it on Facebook, then we got more and more things from different companies. And so look for those opportunities as well. And when we put our makerspace into our library, I put it back onto the kids to work with our budget that we had. And I also did this with books. And so I would tell the kids, it's your responsibility to contact the companies. You need to contact Lego, you need to contact MakerBot, you need to find out if we can get discounts or if we can get free things. And with books and databases, anything like that, I would put it back on the kids to help me. And these are some of our 4th graders last year, and they're Skyping with Lego Education, and they're asking them for a discount. And so I guarantee that it works a lot better coming from kids. And they were great, and I didn't have a lot of time to do it, so it was wonderful. And I'm going to show a video. One of our friends is here from a company that works with publishers. And she's right in the front, Lena, and she made a video for us. But I think the thing that we need to remember too, as you start out as a librarian, you know, when I started out, I was a stay-at-home mom, and I went to college, and I didn't learn any of that, the little things on how to work with, you know, somebody that I was going to buy books with, or what those people could do for me. And so I think this will give you a good glimpse on exactly what a company, like what she and her husband do, could do for you. I'll turn it up a little bit. How do I turn it up? It was loud enough on Skype. I am like PC.
So nice.
Not stupid. Yeah, there's no button on the top. Is it good now?
Lena Gosden, Big Brain Resources. Hi, Lena.
Hi.
Tell us about Big Brain.
Big Brain is a group of independent sales representatives representing a small group of publishers.
And what would be the value of meeting with a representative from Big Brain?
Having a meeting with a representative is that we are knowledgeable about our products and we can become your educational consultants. We also offer value-added incentives such as free shipping, free processing, and in some cases rewards points from certain publishers. We also represent the publisher directly, so we don't have to keep the margins that distributors do, so it's always cost effective to purchase direct. And then we have products that are exclusive to the sales representatives and are only available by meeting with the sales representative.
So who is the expert?
The expert in the field is our customer because they know their audience. And by meeting with a sales representative, they make an educated decision and become the brains in their operation. And our goal really is to make you the big brain in your school or library.
Thank you, Lena.
Thank you.
These are so fun. But I think that, you know, just by, you know, when I started, one of the jobs that I was doing was weeding. And I had no clue that I had like a partner in the people that I bought books from to actually answer questions and to help me, you know, and to help me with like the development of my collection. Or I love that one of my favorite things are like the perk points from Capstone, or these little things, you know, when you're talking about your budget and talking about ways to get books and to get things to really make the most of the budget that you do have, you know, talk to them too and ask them because they need to know those things as well. So if you have any questions afterwards, you can talk to her too. And Mackin is another one. When you sign up for Mackin Via, which holds ebooks and e-resources and audiobooks and now even digital content, when you sign up, you get free books with that sign up. You don't have to purchase anything right away just to try it out. And so think about, you know, the things that you can get from Mackin as well. So imagine what is possible with your learning environment is our next.
Yeah. Something I just want to say about the sales rep too that I can add is that it's interesting because they're in so many different libraries on a daily basis that they are just like a wealth of knowledge that goes beyond what they're selling. My sales reps over the years have provided me with so much insight because they, were able to tell me what the library 3 towns over was doing that I might want to try, or vice versa. It was kind of like our own little collaboration through our sales reps. So they really are such a valuable resource, and it really is important to form those relationships with them so that you can get the most from those relationships. So we're going to try and speed things up a little bit because we want to leave some time at the end for you to ask us some questions. But we're going to talk a little bit about one of our current favorite topics, I think, imagining what's possible with your learning environment. So this is a picture of my library last year on my first day in this library, giant rectangle. And this is the library in the middle of the day. Nobody came into the library. I knew I had a challenge. I was brought to New Milford High School for a reason. My task was to transform this, barren wasteland, as my principal once called it, into a vibrant learning environment. So I knew I had a challenge. I knew what my task was, but I honestly didn't realize how enormous the task was until the first day of school, when not one adult came into the room and not one child came into the room. So this is just me at the counter in the middle of the day taking pictures, thinking about where to go next. So what I did, one of the first things I did was I created a maker space in our library. And I have to say that after just a few weeks of planning, we were able to launch the maker space by, I think, October. And in just that short amount of time, we completely transformed our space into a vibrant learning environment, one that our kids valued, one that they needed, one that they wanted, one that they felt empowered in. And you can even just see all the different activities that started to take place there. So while the room itself didn't change, we desperately needed carpet and paint and all of those things, but what took place in that space changed. And it really made our school the hub of our school community. So I'm grateful for that. So really, aside from just including a maker space in my library, I have always over the years tried to provide opportunities for kids to create, for them to participate in their learning environment. So everything I do in my library, or I try to do in my library, I try to make as interactive as possible. I'm in a high school currently, and a lot of our students are in the library on their independent periods or during their lunch periods, and if they don't have something in front of them productive to do, a lot of them will make the wrong choices, or they'll just sit there on their devices and waste time or take a nap or something like that. So I like to have lots of stimulating things around for them to do, and I oftentimes say my maker space is like recess for big kids. And they need opportunities for play built into their day and opportunities to get creative. Our maker space and actually all of the activities that take place in our library are all based on informal learning. So they're not assessed. Nobody tells them they have to go there at a certain time and do certain things. They do these things because they want to. And that's been an amazing, amazing thing for us. So this is what our library lounge, you can see the tiled floor underneath that little area rug there. This is that back room that I was telling you about. So I think it's really important when we consider our learning environments or when we consider our library environments that we think about creating spaces that are flexible. I really don't like when I walk into a library and the seating screams its purpose. It should be flexible. The furniture in the room, what's in the room, should not determine the purpose for that space. So we try to have that feel in our library as much as we can within the budget constraints that we have. So this is our library lounge in the back, and as I said earlier, it really is used for so many different things throughout the day. Sometimes reading, sometimes work, sometimes we have classes who come down there, sometimes kids are down there by themselves, sometimes they're in their group eating lunch. This room is used for probably 100 different things on a daily basis, and sometimes 10 different things at the same exact time. So it's a great space for them to go, and the furniture is flexible. They move it around depending on what they're doing, and the room itself, the purpose is not defined. They kind of they take ownership over this space. These are just some more examples of some things that we added into our library that kind of add those varied seating areas and those participatory elements. We have high gaming tables, we have cafe tables, we even had a bar installed in our library. That's a picture of our bar right there in the middle. Our custodians were generous enough to build us a bar right on top of some old bookcases, bookshelves that we had that were mounted against the wall that are like stuck there. You can't take down, they're like a part of the wall. So they put this great countertop on top, and this is actually part of our maker space. This is our Little Bits bar, and the kids really love it. And most of the time it's used for Little Bits, but occasionally they'll sit there and they'll do work because it's a nice place to sit in our library. It overlooks like a little courtyard. So this is just something to keep in mind when you're designing your learning environments, making those environments participatory, interactive, flexible, and collaborative. Something I'm passionate about in creating these learning environments also is reflecting the reality of our kids and meeting them where they are. So we are a bring your own device high school, and I encourage that in my library. I provide charging stations for them around the library. We also circulate chargers as well for them if they need to take one with them to another class or another space or even home. And as I said, we also circulate those Chromebooks out of our library. So I'm really passionate about looking at our learning environments and making sure that they reflect the reality of where our kids are and embracing that. Oh, that was your turn. It's still my turn. Okay, so this is another example of something you can do when you're considering your learning environment. You no longer have to be confined to the walls of your institution. My library was built in 1928. It hasn't been renovated in decades upon decades, and at times I felt a little bit frustrated by that. But then I remembered, oh, we have the virtual space we can extend our library into. So this virtual space has really allowed our library to be what's called a constant learning organization. That means our library is open all the time. Kids have a place to go where they can collaborate with their peers. They can work on assignments. And this has been an amazing virtual space for us, especially at the high school level when they all have these crazy schedules. You know, who has sports practice, who has drama practice and drama club and these things. So this virtual space for our students to go has really extended our library and provided opportunities for the students to meet and collaborate outside of the school hours. So this is a virtual extension of our campus at New Milford High School where the kids have little avatars. So it's a 3D avatar-based virtual reality environment.
And my space it's actually very similar to Laura's. It had never been really renovated after about the early 70s. It was basically 2 big classrooms. But we did a lot in this little space over the 8 years that I was there. And this is our elementary space, and then there was an office in our high school space. And it was tiny. Our high school space was much smaller even than our elementary space was. And we didn't have anybody, you know, that was buying us furniture. We had to use things that were donated. I would bring in things that my kids didn't use anymore. But it was all about being flexible, all about being comfortable, and the needs of the kids, because it's really not our space. It belongs to our kids and to our teachers and how they're going to use it. And it was the same thing with the classrooms. When I would go into the classrooms, they were flexible. A lot of the desks moved out. A lot of them moved in things like comfortable seating. And so it wasn't just the library, but it was our rooms that were changing as well. And when I added the 3D printer, I had something cool happen in my library. And I added the printer, like I said, just kind of on a whim one night. I wrote the grant. And I got it funded right away. And the kids started to hear about it. And Luke was one of my students. This is Luke standing by me. And before we got the printer, whenever Luke would see me, he would like sing at the top of his lungs to me. He's autistic. And so it was like being on Glee. He would sing to me, sing to the principal, to all the teachers, all the kids, and that was his voice. As soon as we got the printer, Luke became an expert for the school on 3D printing. And so by watching Luke and what he was doing and how he was drawing people into the office and he was teaching the classes and teaching the kids, he started a YouTube channel about 3D printing. It was amazing. I started looking at where we were going to put not just Luke, but where we were going to create a space for the printer and a maker space. And so I looked at the office, and my associate had been there for 20 years, And I thought she was either going to be super mad at me or cry or be really excited. And she was thrilled. And so we got rid of the office. We didn't have an office anymore in the library. And I gave the kids control of how it was going to look. And so I asked all the kids K-12 to create our makerspace. Not only to the materials that we had, these are the girls, again, Skyping with the people that we ordered things from, to the design of it. They worked with the shop teacher and some parents to design the furniture that was all made from recycled goods. And this is a great picture because in the middle, they went around and they measured like the smallest kids and the tallest kids to make sure the furniture was like the right height for everybody. But we all worked together to make this really small space into something that would be awesome for our school. And when we started putting things in it, I would go to like Lowe's and Home Depot and ask them for things like, can we have like paint cans? Can we have paint trays? I would put things out for free junk on emails. And so it was definitely a community effort on how we were going to do it. And I also this year started thinking about our spaces, like our maker spaces like Laura and I had. They don't have to be either just in a library or a classroom. They could be a maker space to go in a bag. Maybe you check them out. Maybe if you're a public library, you check them out to your patrons, or you check them out to teachers in your schools. And they don't have to just be in a bag. They can also be on our devices. And so there's so many different apps for coding and for creating and for music, anything that could fit into a makerspace. We could also have those be a makerspace mobile as well that we could use. And there's lots of different things. Ebooks could be on there and all kinds of different things. Here's a picture of the ebooks. I concentrated a lot on our collection when we put our makerspace into the library because I knew that we really had to amp up what was given to the kids maybe for creating because some of them needed that direction and that guidance. And so these books that I had in VIA, they were actually from Capstone, and companies are also starting to come out just with books that are tagged for makerspaces. Rosen has a great collection, Capstone has a great collection, so look for those as well. And I put it on also in a Symbaloo and just added really simple, made a little Symbaloo web mix. And this is called S'more. I made a digital newsletter and I sent it out to parents and to teachers for them to know about the digital makerspace. So I didn't just leave it in the library, just like our collection was as well. Now we're going to imagine what is possible with your schedule.
Yeah. I'm going to kind of talk quickly through this, but if you have any questions related to this specifically at the end, I'll totally answer them. But the coolest part about this presentation tonight, I think, is that it was an opportunity for me to reflect on my whole entire career, which is something I haven't done in a long time. And especially with scheduling, I realized that I've experienced so many different types of schedules. And the first one that I used was a flexible schedule. And this is kind of daunting because when I was first a librarian, I actually didn't have a library certificate. I was a classroom teacher that they kind of well, they gave me a choice if I wanted to move into the library, and I did, and on the job, I got my library certificate. They had emergency certified me, and so I really knew nothing about being a librarian. So I had this flexible schedule, and this was really a big challenge, especially not knowing anything about the library field at all. So the way this worked in my school at the time was my schedule hung in the main office. It was empty. And teachers signed up to bring their classes in at various times. And I have to say, at first, nobody signed up because they didn't know me. They didn't know what the library could do, what I could do for them. But the way that I got a lot of teachers on board, and I still do this to this day, is you find a couple of teachers to collaborate with in the beginning, and they become your champions. They go back to the rest of the staff and they say, wow, I did this great thing in the library. The librarian did this for me. And the kids start talking about it, and it really becomes a buzz. And before I knew it, by the end of the school year, I didn't even get lunch. My entire schedule was filled up. So that's sort of a bad part. With the flexible schedules, you don't always get a consistent lunch built in there unless you block it out. But to me, I never blocked out a lunch because I wanted to use those opportunities to work with the teachers and work with the kids rather than sit and eat lunch. So that was just my preference. But this was one of the scheduling systems that I was under at the beginning of my career. And then I moved into a fixed schedule as I moved into an elementary library. So this was a totally different experience for me. These were classes that were assigned to the library, so I was now a prep. Classes came in back to 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 back. no passing time in between, so 6th graders might be walking out and kindergartners would be walking in simultaneously. I always said it felt like I worked in an emergency room. I was running around sweating, and it was all great, but it was very rigorous. But some of the stress is taken away from having that flexible schedule because you're guaranteed classes are going to be coming in at certain times. It was a totally different experience. I won't say I like one better than the other. They were just totally different. And now I have absolutely no schedule. And I have this picture up here because at times it feels like walking a tightrope without a net. You have no security, no safety built in to your day. And there's days I wake up where I'm like, oh my gosh, our kid's going to come in and use the makerspace today, or our class is going to want to come in, or what are we going to do? And those are sometimes the most rewarding days because every day is totally different than the next. I don't have a schedule that hangs up in the main office anymore. It's completely up to me to initiate collaborations with classroom teachers and foster those partnerships. So it's a little bit different than my initial flexible schedule because I really have complete autonomy and I'm able to do anything I want throughout the course of a day, but I'm expected to do something and great things. So it can be kind of daunting sometimes, but equally as rewarding.
And I'm going to zip through mine, but I had a schedule that was fixable and flexed. And so my elementary kids were fixed, and I also had them on a flexible schedule, and my high school kids, my secondary kids, were flexible. And so I taught all day long. And I was thankful, though, for both of those schedules because I think it'd be really hard to do it without it. In our curriculum, we had a really rigorous curriculum, K-12, that encompassed digital citizenship and tech and information literacy and also a love of reading. And that really drove why we had to have that schedule because there were a lot of things that our teachers and I had to do through collaboration and through the projects that we did together. And all of these things were also assessed. And so I was viewed as one of their teachers. And so I gave all of those kids a grade for all those different standards that we were teaching too. So that really drove it as well. So now we're going to imagine what is possible when you collaborate.
Okay, so Shannon's going to talk a lot about this, but I just wanted to talk about a program that we have in our library this year that has been very successful for us. It's called Hang Out with a Maker, and as a part of this program, we invite community members into our maker space. So sometimes those are people who are local to our library and who physically come into the library. Other times it's people who, through the power of Skype or Google Hangout, we have visit our maker space. So I think a lot of the times when we think about collaboration, we think about collaborating with our staff or collaborating with parents or students, but something else to think about is how can you collaborate with the community and bring those community members in. And especially when we're talking parents, they're so eager to get into the schools, even at the high school level. And the great part about our maker space and making in general is that everybody is good at doing something. So it's an opportunity for people to come in and showcase their skills and their talents. And the message we try to get across to our high school kids is that makers can earn a living from their making. So once they see that people can take these skills that they've gained in our maker space and apply them to the real world and actually make like livings out of them and turn it into their profession, has been very, very, very profound for them. And a lot of kids have since pursued either careers related to things they've done in our maker space or college majors based on things they've done in our maker space. So this has been a really successful way of collaborating beyond just the four walls of your school. Oh, this is, sorry, the last picture was, this is a community member that we brought in physically. He was actually a graduate of New Milford High School. He came into our maker space to demo a bike repair, which sounds so dry, but it completely was the opposite. The kids were fully engaged. Along the way, they learned a little bit about physics and a whole bunch of things. So it was really a powerful experience for all of the kids. And this was an example of the power of Twitter again. I connected with a company called Peacemaker, and it's a 3D printing company. And recently they visited our maker space. They actually came in person, but I met them virtually at first. And they talked to our kids all about 3D printing and how they can take these skills that they've gained through our 3D printing program and the design skills they've gained and turn them into actual careers and make money off of these things.
And I'm going to go super fast. I'm going to actually flip through some of these. Oh, I had to show this one, though, because we wanted to talk about the power of collaborating with your administrators. And so, or people that are in charge of you, too, if you're at a public library. Don't be afraid to collaborate with those people in charge, because if you want to make a difference in your library, you have to have those relationships with those people. And this is actually a picture of Eric, who was Laura's principal over on the far side, visiting our school in Van Meter, Iowa. And we all knew each other because of Twitter. And so it just shows the power, too, of collaboration, not just within your school and how important that is, but I remember when he was looking for a librarian, actually, and he spoke in Iowa, and we spoke about it. And so it makes a huge difference when you make those connections. And also with parents, don't forget that whatever we're telling our kids, our patrons, that they're taking these things home and they're sharing it with parents as well. And this was a huge thing to me, because they can teach parents so many things that maybe they don't know, and they can teach them those skills. You know, if it's learning how to do a citation on EasyBib or how to use a digital tool. And your public library, those connections with school and public are just huge. And this was a summer reading program that we did, and as you can see, the library is filled, and it's a small little space, but we had a lot of great things going on. And also the connections that you can make when you go to events like this. And these are just a few pictures of national events that Joyce is actually in 3 of them. I just noticed that. But we do a lot of this, and that is so important. When we go, when we're on all these connections, most of them we have made through Twitter and through conferences. But these are my teachers. They're the ones that are who are supporting and helping me too. I'm going to just flip through. I'm going to flip through this part. Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about social media, maybe, if they have questions. But the thing is, and we're going to just flip through that part and leave time to ask questions, but I think that it's really important just to imagine what is possible in your library. All these things that Laura and I spoke about, they can happen in a public or school or a different kind of library also, but imagine what is possible.
Yeah, and those hats that I talked about in the beginning, really the message I wanted to get across to all of you is that don't feel like every day you have to wear all of those hats, or your first day on the job out of college you have to wear all of those hats. Take it one day at a time. And anytime you're in doubt about what decisions to make or what to do, as long as you put kids first and what's good for kids and what's best for kids, you can't go wrong.
Yeah, I always used to say I felt like the cruise director, you know, just like what you said, because you wear hats that you never ever thought you would wear. And I love this, what Laura said, because you don't, like I said in the beginning, don't think you have to do all of this all at once. And when I was at Disney over spring break last year, when you go to Disney, Disney was never like negative about change or negative about doing anything. And he always had signs up that were called the Dream Builders. And I love this one, and it says the way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. And that really sums it up on how we can make a change. And so we both encourage you to have your world be the platform in your library, and also, you know, just to think about how you can inspire change and how you can be that change too. So that was fast.
This is so inspiring. I'm going to tell you the end of our little story. We're going to invite down a special guest, and then I don't want just questions from you folks. I want to get either a question or a takeaway, because you have to have come away with something brilliant that you're going to want to do in school or in a library, like tomorrow or when you get a school or a library. So this is my little ending. Then we're going to invite down Dr. Ross Todd, who has been listening. All right, so my takeaway is this. You don't have to be a prince or a princess, but you do have to be clever. When you have wishes, what I want you to do is turn the wishes into vision. I want you to take opportunities to go on quests, to solve riddles, to fight dragons, to recognize when the beans you have in your pocket are indeed magic ones, even when to others they look just like beans. I want you to consider the magic you can make for young people, and the stories you will tell, and the stories they themselves will tell. No child should go into the woods without a librarian. So, Dr. Todd, What wisdom? Before we do our takeaways and a couple of questions, what wisdom do you have to share?
First of all, I just want to say hello to everybody. I don't get over to the colloquiums all that often because on Wednesday night I actually teach a class, a class of doctoral students, but I'm just delighted. And Laura and Shannon, what a wonderful, wonderful privilege to have you here with us at Rutgers. I'm truly, truly honoured, and I hope that each of you are inspired. You know what stood out for me? I just love the energy, the sense of breaking the rules. You know, it's better to seek forgiveness than it is to get permission sometimes. And just wonderfully inspiring. And you know what I think one of my great takeaways is? You know, I was listening to the daunting tasks, even not having a budget. And having nothing can be the most empowering and inspiring dynamic in your lives. You know, and we start small. Sometimes we start with nothing, and out of nothing, such wonderful, great, and really lasting things can happen. So Laura and Shannon, just a total inspiration, and I'm just delighted to actually have the opportunity to be here in a colloquium tonight. So thank you both.
We're honored.
Nothing is always something so powerful. Hang on to it.
Thank you. I know we went over, but I'm thrilled that you were here, and I'm just looking at your faces, and I'm so excited for you because I want to be at the point you're at right now, just starting in this profession. So give me either a takeaway or a question, or give these ladies. Why don't you guys take the mic back?
You can also sit at the table.
Oh, that would be fun.
Yeah, why don't you guys sit at the table?
All right. What are you guys thinking?
No question to that?
And we have online students too that I know we're talking to. We have to remember them. Dana, and then the gentleman back there.
Well, I just have to say, this was an amazing presentation with so many options and resources. Where do you even start, like on day one? How do you decide which of these amazing opportunities you should pursue?
Relationships is the first thing. You can't do any of that without first starting relationships with your. Laura and I were very lucky because we had administrators that were very lucky, but we were also, I'm both hired because we were seen as leaders, you know, and we weren't afraid to speak about what we wanted to do. But that came with relationships. I mean, I used to meet my superintendent for coffee. I used to invite teachers over for wine. I mean, it's all about that relationship with the adults and the kids. It's all about getting to know because no library is alike. You have to know your community, and you have to, you know, when you first go in, and I was a member of the community, I was a parent, and I was on lots of committees, and my kids, I had 3 kids in school, but it was different being there, so.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember the picture of my library on the first day of school. I literally sat there all day thinking, what am I going to do? Where do I start? And because nobody came into the library, that didn't stop me from fostering those relationships. I just went out of the library. I walked the halls, I went into the cafeteria, I talked to kids, I talked to teachers, and before you know it, they started coming in because of those initial relationships that were built.
Sir, yeah. Tell us your name too. I'm sorry.
Hi, my name's Matt, and again, great talk, wonderful takeaways here. You mentioned a lot about ebooks, and I'm a huge proponent and a big fan, but one of the big questions that was brought up by one of my mentors, a school library media person, is that they aren't completely, when you buy them, when you purchase them, they're not completely yours, and the rights are revocable. So do you see that as an immediate problem, a future problem, and how do we deal with that?
Would you like to answer that?
There are so many different options that address digital rights management. And I've stopped buying materials where I couldn't get full rights, and flexible rights. And we can list at least 5 different options for school libraries where you don't have to mess with that.
And I made sure that they had 24/7 access to anyone who wanted to read them. If they had a single user stipulation on them, I wouldn't purchase them.
You're the customer.
Yeah, that's how most of them, yeah, we didn't have any. We didn't purchase fiction, and there were 2 reasons. One, the kids didn't come to us and ask for fiction that they could read on a device. If kids had devices that they were bringing to school, they had parents too that were supporting those books, or they went to the public library and they would check books out. It was just, that part was just too expensive for us to, within our budget. But to purchase, a book that had unlimited access or a database for all kids to use, that made more sense for us. So.
Yeah, it all depends on the publishers that you're working with, because every publisher does their own thing. So some publishers give you unlimited access. Some publishers give you just a, one-on-one access. So it all depends. You have to shop around and you have to be diligent and
If you email us, we can send you some options that would work best. Let us know what your situation is.
Yeah.
Other takeaways or questions? Yeah, Emily.
I love the makerspace. I've never worked with it myself, but I really want to get into it because I think it's such a good creativity builder. Like, it really gets the kids to do more hands-on things. Do you guys have I don't really know exactly the setup. Like, there's one makerspace in the library, or are there a bunch of different stations? How does it work exactly?
Yeah, we have one makerspace in our school, and within that makerspace, I have what are called fixed stations and flexible stations, and the fixed stations are out there all the time. The flexible stations rotate in and out for various reasons. But really, I am a big proponent that no 2 makerspaces should ever be alike. They should be unique to your library, your school community, if you're in a school, or what the needs are of the patrons in your public library, what their interests are. So taking a lot of time out in planning your makerspace and finding out what your patrons are interested in doing, what you want to provide for them, opportunities you might want to provide for them that they don't get elsewhere throughout their day, opportunities for to be creative, as you said. So really there isn't one right way to do it, is what I'm trying to say. So we have it in a corner of our library. Shannon had it in a different area of her library. There's some people, Andy Fleming actually, he has great maker-related activities going on in his library, but he doesn't have a designated maker space. He has more of this maker culture that runs all throughout his school day and his library program. So there really isn't one right way to do it.
And we let the kids take things out of the library too. It didn't just stay, maybe the materials were there, but our space was very small. And yes, we had making happening, all over, even before we put the maker space into the library. But you would see kids with, connects up in, a classroom upstairs in the high school, or the kids in the lunchroom with the Sphero balls, or outside with a video camera and a green screen. I mean, it didn't just stay in the perimeters of the wall in our library.
And I know what's going on in these ladies' libraries, not because I visited them, but because the transparency of their blogs allow you to actually see what it looks like. So I've seen your Worlds of Learning, and we should probably give contact stuff, and your Van Meter Voice, which is Library Voice now. You can see absolutely every step of this and what the spaces look like. Mm-hmm. And Andy's as well.
Let's do some online.
Yeah, David and Allison. Sorry.
This is from one of our online viewers. They're wondering if there's plenty of resources that we learn about to keep track of, like young adult reading lists and things like that. But how do you keep track of all the different social media tools and the web-based learning tools? Like, we could go to your blogs and find them, but where do you guys get all this information?
Well, I have a dashboard, and one of the things on my dashboard is a dashboard of how to find things to put on your dashboard. and we're all curating this stuff, and so we're all like we're on the Best Apps Committee. So we're all reading. We're not only reading reviews of books anymore. We're selecting apps and web tools, and load of places, graphite, children's software review. There's EdShelf, but I've got a dashboard of just the review tools on my Symbaloo and in my LibGuides, and we keep track of this stuff because other people ask us all the time. We're a resource also for other librarians and teachers, so we need to be able to say, hey, let's look here and figure out what the best tool for this particular task is.
And another quick thing that I did is when I first started joining all of those different networks, I branded everything the same way. So everything was called the Library Voice, the Van Meter Library Voice, and that helped just our community keep everything together. You know, let's look for the Van Meter Library Voice YouTube or the Van Meter Library Voice Instagram. And so that really helped our community, I think, organize it in an easy way too.
About 5 more minutes left.
Okay, and Allison and then Joe?
So I know you guys touched on scheduling, and Laura, based on like what your library looks like and how you have like an open door policy, how do you balance like numerous classes or classes being in there and students being in there and trying to use the same space at the same time?
Well, we have teachers that are assigned duty in our library every period of the day, so that allows me to be able to leave the library. So I can also go into classrooms or into the labs that we have throughout our building. But if classes come into the library, we rarely close our library. If you saw me on Twitter today, our library was closed because we had a flood in our building and we had a bunch of classes that had to relocate to the library, but we rarely close the library. In fact, some of the most rewarding moments have been when we've had classes taking place in our library and have left the doors open for the other kids to come and go as they please. We've had so many kids pull over chairs and join the classes going on and voluntarily participate in the activities that were taking place. And we didn't stop them. It was an amazing thing. So we just all sort of share the space, and it works for us.
Well, and I think as you build, it's just like what all of our libraries were like, it comes back to that community again, you know, and that's everybody's space. That's the heart of, you know, the school. And so it doesn't matter if you have 5 different grade levels. I mean, in mine, it was crazy sometimes. We had kindergartners with seniors, but look for the opportunities too, how you can use that to your advantage. You know, are the kindergartners, are they using a tool that may be a little bit difficult? Then ask the class that's over next door to help them for 5 minutes. You know, use those opportunities too and create that community, because that's when you really see the culture come through, is when you have those different events and activities. I encourage that all the time, you know, for that to happen. There was just an open space.
Joe, do you have a question?
I just wanted to say, if you want to try and get your hands dirty with some of the maker spaces around here, Livingston has an award-winning, in 2013 we won the World Maker Fair Top Educational Makerspace on Livingston campus. That's available. There's 3 or 4 3D printers, laser cutters, everything else you'd want to try. The Douglas Library has 3D printers as well. And if you want to try a public library, Piscataway's main library has a wonderful makerspace over there. So there's plenty of opportunities right around us to try these out.
And Maker's Day is coming up on the 21st.
Yes, Maker's Day is coming up.
Let's do one more online question.
Okay.
I just had a question. I just had a viewer question about what age group do you start bringing in those devices for storytelling? Like, when does that start? The technology stop becoming an obstacle and start becoming a tool?
Kindergarten.
Okay.
Yeah. K through 12.
And we would invite our preschoolers too, because we had a preschool in our building, and so I invited them to Skypes as well. So, you know, you have to have that conversation, not just have those opportunities, but have that conversation from the very beginning too about being good digital citizens, you know, and being just a citizen really in the world that we live in, because that's, you know, they're picking up things when they're 6 months old at home, and so we need to introduce them to that right away. And they can do it. They love it.
And the library is where they exercise the most agency. Did you see them measuring each other, taking leadership roles and deciding what the space was going to look like? This is maybe the only place in a child's life where they have that kind of freedom and importance, and you can give them that voice. So I think that's really important. I know, yeah, we have to cut now. Connie, do you want to come down? Or no? Okay. All right, so I am kind of in charge of telling you what's coming up next. And so I'm very excited. Not only did we have a wonderful colloquium tonight, but, and we'll give the ladies some love in a minute, on March 11th, we have Jan Ramirez and Amy Weinstein, and they are from the 9/11 Memorial Museum, and they're going to be talking about the very sensitive collection and the artifacts that they developed. So everybody should come to that one, especially people who are interested in archives and historical libraries and collections of that sort. And then on April 8th, we have another Rutgers alum, Naomi House, and who knows who Naomi is? Okay. Naomi House, one of the co-founders of I Need a Library Job. She's coming and she's going to talk about getting ready for careers, how you can network, LinkedIn makeover kinds of things, and not only that, and there's more. And we're going to have a professional portrait photographer here to take your LinkedIn profile picture. And so if you come, make sure that you look professional, at least from the waist up. And we're coming up, and for you online people who can't be here for the photographer, we're coming up with a special thing for you as well. So I would love for us to thank our very special guest, Laura Fleming. I want to thank you guys for coming tonight, and you have chosen the most exciting profession. Lena.
Joyce, can I just say, I brought some giveaways. I have
Giveaways?
Yes, I have free books. And
does anybody here like those? That'll make you very positive. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, folks online, too.